The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
In your 17 Crime Watch this morning, sheriff's deputies are investigating a homicide in Lamont. It happened yesterday on DeGiorgio Road. That's where sheriff's deputies found a man suffering from head trauma. He died at the scene. Beyond that, no further information has been made available. If you know anything, you're urged to call Kern County Sheriff's Office at 861-3110 or Secret Witness at 322-4040.
This morning, police are investigating a school threat posted on social media regarding Earl Warren Junior High School. Officials say the validity of the threat is unsubstantiated at this time. However, the violence is specified for today. So if you're going to be going to the school today, you'll notice extra officers around the area just as a precaution. BPD says it is working closely with school officials to find out who made the threat.
Making news around the state, a 15-year-old girl was stabbed to death on her high school campus in Stockton by an intruder who police say targeted her. Detectives say the student was stabbed multiple times by a man who arrived on campus in a vehicle. They say he walked up through the front gate and attacked Alicia Reynaga, dropped the knife, and laid down before campus police arrested him. Alicia died a short time later at the hospital. Her attacker has been identified as 52-year-old Anthony Gray. No word on a motive for the attack or how Gray knew the teenager.
In the wake of the mass shooting in Sacramento, some groups are urging state lawmakers to step up resources for crime victims. A new study released yesterday shows many victims are not being provided with the services and compensation they say they need.
We are talking about expanding rights for victims. We are talking about ending discriminatory practices that render some people ineligible for receiving services. And we are talking about making assistance flexible.
The Prosecutors Alliance released a survey of more than 700 crime victims. It says 40% of those surveyed say they were not offered victims' compensation. Another 55% say they did not get counseling or mental health care services because they would have had to pay out of pocket and could not afford it. Some lawmakers promised to make sure the needs for crime victims are met through a series of bills they're pushing this year, including more training for first responders, having more victim advocates available in district attorneys' offices, extending compensation to those who are victims of police brutality, and increasing protections for sexual assault survivors.
San Jose police say they've busted a group of serial jewelry thieves. According to police, 6 men were responsible for a string of smash and grab robberies dating back to October of last year. The men used sledgehammers to smash open displays and take thousands of dollars worth of jewelry. Police seized a number of weapons, including 2 assault rifles, ghost guns, and pepper spray. Each of the suspects could face between 18 and 20 years in prison.
The person suspected of starting a fire that tore through a Home Depot in San Jose has been arrested and charged. No one was hurt in the fire, which took about 6 hours to put out when it erupted near the store's lumber supply. 45 people were evacuated from their homes because of the blaze.
An unusual afternoon chase yesterday on the 101 freeway in Hollywood. Police on bikes responded to reports of a man with a big wrench threatening people. Moments later, we see the suspect walking across the 101 not far from the Capitol Records building. He eventually throws the wrench to the ground as at least a dozen officers close in to cuff and arrest him.
Vice President Kamala Harris was in Lompoc yesterday visiting the men and women of the United States Space Force and Space Command. While there, she also received briefings on their work to advance our national security.
The United States will continue to be a leader in order to establish, to advance, and demonstrate norms for the responsible and peaceful use of outer space.
Harris went on to condemn anti-satellite weapon systems used by both Russia and China to destroy satellites in space.
Your time now is 5:06, and now to the coronavirus. Travelers have mixed feelings after a federal judge in Florida overturned the mask mandate for travel. The latest ruling means masks are no longer required on planes, trains, and buses. The judge called the mandate unlawful, saying that the government has no authority to require travelers to wear masks as a way of slowing the spread of COVID. The Biden administration says it's disappointed by the ruling, but that the decision means the CDC's public transportation masking order is not in effect at this time. Some travelers were happy to hear the news, while others say they'll not be ditching their masks anytime soon.
Just as we were getting ready to land, they made the announcement that the mask mandate was no longer in effect and we could all take our masks off. And when they announced it on the plane, everyone just cheered and ripped their mask off.
I got underlying conditions, so I have to wear a mask. And my wife, she's going to wear a mask regardless. I think she wears a mask to bed. Sometimes I swear for goodness.
Meantime, our state has no plans to impose new statewide coronavirus restrictions. California's Health and Human Services Secretary Mark Ghaly saying yesterday there's been a much slower increase than in previous waves. He says the state is focusing on encouraging people to get vaccinated and boosted and wear a mask where appropriate. He also says there's no indication that health departments across California plan to reinstate restrictions despite an increase in cases. Currently in Los Angeles County, hospitals are treating a little more than 200 patients. According to CDC metrics, that number is considered low. If the weekly rate of new hospital admissions were more than quadruple that number, the county could reinstate its universal indoor mask mandate. As of today, Uber says riders and drivers are not required to wear masks while using the service. The company is reminding customers that the CDC is still recommending masks for those with certain personal risk factors or have high transmission rates in the area. Uber also says that people still feel safe wearing a mask because of personal or family health situations, and they urge everyone to be respectful of the preferences of others. The company says if customers feel uncomfortable, they will be permitted to cancel the trip.
17 court watch this morning, more than 5 years after claiming she was the victim of a wild kidnapping. Sherry Papini has pleaded guilty to making it all up. Appearing before a federal judge in Sacramento, the Northern California mother confessed to lying to a federal officer and to mail fraud. The 39-year-old admitted she hid out with an ex-boyfriend during the 2 weeks she claimed to have been kidnapped, beaten, and branded by 2 women in 2016. Prosecutors agreed to a plea deal of 8 to 14 months in prison. Papini also agreed to pay $300,000 in restitution. She's due back in court for sentencing in July.
The trial of Matthew Queen, the man accused of torturing and murdering Michael Holsenbake, a member of the Bakersfield Three, resumed yesterday. Crime lab analysts testified about testing zip ties, rope, and a wooden shelf for DNA evidence. Holsenbake disappeared in late March 2018. Only an arm and skull from his body have been recovered. A zip tie was found around the wrist of Holsenbake's arm, recovered from a bag in the Kern River months after his death. Orange and black rope was also found in the bag, similar to a spool of rope found in the garage of Queen's home. Investigators removed a wooden shelf from a garage where prosecutors say Holsenbake was secured with zip ties, then tortured and killed by Matthew Queen and his ex-girlfriend Bailey Despot, whose whereabouts are still unknown. Queen faces dozens of charges. He faces 50 years life to prison if convicted. You can read more about the trial on our website, kget.com.
A man who worked as a teacher's aide at Old River Elementary School in Bakersfield was sentenced yesterday to a year in jail and must register as a sex offender for possessing child pornography. Matthew Cornejo was arrested in November and told police he used his iPhone to download and view the images for sexual gratification, according to court documents. Police say no local children were identified as victims. According to court filings, Cornejo said he didn't act on his sexual urges because he didn't want to harm a child or damage his reputation.
Jury selection is underway in the trial of a Bakersfield man who told authorities he killed his daughter-in-law for dishonoring him. Jagjit Singh is charged with first-degree murder in the shooting death of 37-year-old Sumandeep Kaur Kunar. Kunar's body was found in late August 2019 inside a home on Menachie Meadows Drive in southwest Bakersfield. Singh told police he shot Kunar because she was having an affair and threatened to leave the family, according to court filings. He also said she threatened to call police and claimed he sexually assaulted her, according to documents obtained by 17 News. Opening statements could begin as early as tomorrow.
Your time now is 5:36. Staying safe online is hard enough for adults, but it is our kids who are most vulnerable. 17's Chris Burton sat down with an expert for some tips on keeping your children safe. Chris?
Well, many kids not only have security issues to worry about, but also the challenges of growing up, heightened by the internet and social media. As a parent, there are a few things that you can do to help. In a digital world, it's more important than ever to know what your kids are doing online.
Their identities can be stolen, all these other things as well, but then there's cyberbullying and the way you learn things and what they talk, and your kids are probably talking to individuals you don't want them to.
Along with cybersecurity, kids face issues like body dysmorphia, predation, and bullying on the internet and through apps like Snapchat and Instagram. Studies by the CDC and other organizations estimate at least 1 in 6 high schoolers experiences cyberbullying. Cybersecurity expert Robert Miles says to monitor what your kids are doing, you need to get involved.
Especially if they're small children, you should do those programs first. You should get involved in them and see what the ad intakes are, because it's not just, there's so much more danger for small children than there are for adults.
Another key to keeping kids safe? Talk to them. At an age-appropriate level, allow your kids to understand the dangers the internet can pose.
For smaller children like mine, I just tell them that, you know what, we don't talk about where we live. We don't talk about, you know, what daddy does or personal information or mommy and daddy's real name.
For teens, Miles recommends giving it to them straight.
I think you just have to do the same thing you do with adults and tell them this is the truth, this is the risk that it could put you at, and this is what you should not do.
For resources on how to spot and stop cyberbullying, visit stopbullying.gov. Well, throughout the month of April, we have been taking a look at online safety. Next week, I'll dive into the most common cyber attacks and how you can avoid them. In studio, Chris Burton, 17 News.
All right, Chris, thanks so much. And making news around town this morning, it is a wish come true for a Bakersfield girl who has faced so many challenges in her young life. 4-year-old Reagan was born at just 24 weeks, weighing only 1 pound 3 ounces. She suffers from a pulmonary condition and has undergone several procedures to clear her lungs. Yesterday, Make-A-Wish of Kern County gifted Reagan a brand new playset.
We're just very grateful and thankful for Make-A-Wish and all the volunteers that have come out here, and this was quite the project. It was a little bit bigger than I thought it was going to be, but we're so super excited.
Reagan spent the first 18 months of her life in the hospital. Her parents are looking forward to watching her grow, thrive, and play on a new playset.
Oh my gosh, such a cutie.
This event for us is very near and dear to our hearts because they supply our canine teams with crucial equipment. That's going to be armor for the dogs sometimes for critical situations.
That was just one of many statements of gratitude on Saturday from Canine Patrol deputies with the Kern County Sheriff's Office during a fundraiser for the SO's Canine Unit at Compassion Corner right outside our studios. The event was hosted by the Rivers of Living Waters Church in Bakersfield as a means of giving back to the dedicated men and women and canines who put their lives on the line every day. They're still counting, but last year raised $6,000. If you missed the event, you can still donate. You can call the phone number 432-7570 for more information.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.